And action. Welcome back, everybody. I got a special guest here today with me live. We're here on a very windy LA day here, which is putting me back down to 1990s internet. So hopefully this records smoothly. But if it doesn't, today is the day of the windy days. So keep that in mind, audience. All right.
Right.
We got a nice slate of films here from the Christmas times and a little bit before that. But our number one movie this week will be A Complete Unknown. That's the Bob Dylan story starring Timothee Chalet and directed by James Mangold. Next, we have Nosferatu, which stars Nicholas Hoult and Lily-Rose Depp. And that is the remake of the 1922 classic German film. Third, we have Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which is the third movie in the Sonic franchise. Fourth, we have the movie Homestead, which, just FYI real quick, that's a movie release and then it'll become a series eventually after that. So little interesting tidbit on that.
Mhm.
Fifth, we have Kraven the Hunter, starring Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Right.
Sixth, we have Carry On, which is on Netflix. That's starring Taron Egerton and Jason Bateman. And last, we'll do Mother's Instinct, which is streaming on Hulu now, and that stars Anne Hathaway and Jessica Chastain. So, with that, Pete, let's get into A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan story, starring Timothée Chalamet.
Chalamet.
Chalamet, what did I say?
Chamelet?
Chalamet. Yeah, sorry. I always get them.
Goodness
Yeah.
gracious.
And also, Ellie Fanning's in it as well, and
Mhm.
Monica. I forget the last name off the top of my head.
Barbaro.
Barbaro, that's right, from Top Gun Maverick.
Ah, right. That's right.
And Edward Norton, of course, is in
And
it.
don't forget Edward Norton. That's
And
right.
it's directed by James Mangold. James Mangold, of course, directed Logan, Ford versus Ferrari. Um,
Dial of Destiny, Indiana Jones.
oh, that's right. Yeah, he just did Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny,
310 to Yuma, one of the best films.
and the Johnny Cash movie,
Walk the Line.
Walk the Line. Yeah. So,
And the most underrated film ever is Identity.
mm,
Identity was one of the best movies
yeah,
that
that
I
was really
saw.
good.
Very underrated.
Super underrated. Yeah. So, Pete, what are your thoughts?
Oh, by far, for me, this is the best film I've seen all year, and I'd have to look at the past couple of years, but I mean, everyone knows what an icon Bob Dylan is. His music is, inspirational, revolutionary. I mean, it just changed so much about history. But taking out what we know about Bob Dylan and just looking this as just like a single movie. I mean, not only do you get the performance of his lifetime, Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan, he just, encapsulated Bob Dylan, not only the look, but the sound, the mannerisms, um, even just the little smiles that he does. This is by far his greatest performance. He may never top it ever again, although I would argue he will because he's our generation's best actor. I can't think of somebody else. I mean, the last go round, the last generation, I mean, you could argue that like somebody like a Brad Pitt is phenomenal just because of how diverse his acting style is and how good he is and also how selective he is. I mean, he's not really in a lot of bad movies. And it's the same with Timothée Chalamet. He just picks the right projects and he does a phenomenal job. Now, what I loved about this film specifically was that yes, it's historical and they go through a better chunk of his career, but I really love the way they centered around the what was the name of the singer?
Peter
Woody
Seeger?
Guthrie. No,
Oh,
Woody
right.
Guthrie and him dying and that friendship along with Pete Seeger or Bob Seeger.
Pete Seeger.
Pete Seeger. Bob Seeger, I think was in Creedence Clearwater Revival, I think, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Completely different.
Um, but the relationship between the three of them and how good of friends that they were and how inspiring they were to each other. and wrapping everything around that relationship, I thought was a very smart move because they could have just done Bohemian Rhapsody and done like, here's the start, here's the finish, and have it all centered around an event or like One Love. Like it's all centered around this one concert, and then they give you like a lot of historical linear storytelling. This one was very linear as well, but it chose a specific relationship in Bob Dylan's career, which I had zero idea about,
Yeah.
and they just expounded on that. I thought the Monica Barbaro was very good as Joan Baez, and then the dude that played Johnny Cash, I thought was fantastic.
Boyd Holbrook, I think is his name.
He looked and sounded, and his mannerisms and everything was much more akin to the real Johnny Cash than even Joaquin Phoenix was, even though that performance was phenomenal. I would have loved to see this guy in Walk the Line a little bit,
Yeah.
um, because it was that good. This is the best movie of the year. That's
Yeah.
it. That's what I got for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm not too far off on a lot of what you have to say. I knew nothing about Bob Dylan going into this, and just quick couple facts before I get into the rest of it. But this has a 7.8 on IMDb, which I'd probably go 8.5, 9. But I can
I
totally
would
see
definitely
if
get up there.
I could totally see if you're not really into music, this movie may not work for you. Obviously, I think you got to like music. You don't necessarily be a Bob Dylan fan, but you gotta like music, I think, because you know it's a story about a musician, right?
Yeah.
Metacritic 71, which is really good. But box office wise, Pete, this is kind of shocking. So it's had a budget of 65 million, and worldwide it's only made 42 million so far.
What?
So this is definitely in the red. Obviously, with streaming, it'll eventually make its money, but a little disappointed in the numbers. I actually seen it twice already.
It's
Uh,
disappointing.
so yeah, I'm a little
Shame
surprised.
on you, world.
Yeah,
This is one of the best movies you'll see in a while, and that's a shame.
I'm with you that I do think this is one of the best pictures of the year. I don't think it's the best picture of the year. I still think Dune 2 is more up my alley, and I think there's another one.
Starring Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah, starting to I need to go through my list, which we'll do. That's our next podcast. People will be, our best of 2024, and we'll give a couple awards out, all that good stuff. But yeah, I mean, Timothy Chalamet did an amazing job in this, and he should be a shoo-in for Best Actor. There's some great performances this year, but you know, he was locked in on Bob Dylan the whole time. And yeah, I agree with you in terms of picking. Go ahead, you're gonna say something.
Well, I was going to say he is a shoo-in, you would think, but then Adrian Brody last night or the night before just won Best Actor for The Brutalist, which I'm almost done with. I've got about 10 more minutes left of the movie, and
I'm hoping to see it this week. So
his performance is really good. It's like the pianist Adrian Brody, like that
yeah,
good. I'm not quite sure it's as good as Timothy Chalamet's Bob Dylan at all. I mean,
yeah,
there's no way.
yeah. We'll see. I put this. When you talk about music biopics, I always put the standard as Ray. And Ray, I just think was so well done from top to bottom, to include Jamie Foxx's performance, which I believe he won the Oscar for, right, Pete?
Yeah, I think so.
But I put this up there. I liked it more than Bohemian Rhapsody overall. I like Bohemian Rhapsody a little bit more just because of I knew the music more, so it's a little bit more. I just connected to it more. But I thought like the way it was paced and everything else, I thought this was just a better complete film. And again, to include Monica Barbaro and even Elle Fanning, Edward Norton, like the whole cast was just absolutely exceptional. And I think the craft of the film was higher.
I don't think there was a bad moment during any of
No,
their
or
performances. Like
unnecessary. Yeah, no, it was a pretty tight film. Uh,
it was long, but it was not too long. But
no,
everything had purpose,
yeah,
and the only argument that a counter argument to the Bohemian Rhapsody is that, at least you can. It's very comparable the how good each movie is. I mean, they're pretty close, although I would give the edge to Complete Unknown. But in terms of like actors, I felt like not only did he look like Bob Dylan, but he sounded like Bob Dylan and he acted like Bob Dylan. Rami Malek, as good as that performance was for him, he didn't really look a ton like him. I mean, other than
sure.
the teeth. And nobody looks like Freddie Mercury. So how are you really going to pull that off?
Yeah,
But he doesn't really look like Bob Dylan. They just did a little bit prosthetic, I think. It looks like it anyways.
yeah,
Um, but it just looked identical. I mean, I thought I was watching, almost a documentary at times. It was just
yeah,
really that well done
yeah, for sure.
and accurate.
Yeah, yeah. It seemed I did a little bit of research afterward, but again, I just thought this was a complete film. I would put it right under Ray in terms of musical biopics. Um,
Yeah.
Overall
And
movie. Again, like there's certain things that maybe higher here and there. I don't think anything is ever going to top Ray just because I just think it was just too good of a story in a way.
yeah, but the reason why I liked Ray so much, and why I think this one is a good 1 to 1A and you can flip flop them, is that Ray didn't hold anything back. It's like this is as awful as his life
Yeah,
was, even during his successes. Like what he did was not good.
yeah.
He wasn't just a good
It was
person. I
more
mean,
raw.
he was
Yeah,
a good person to people, but they showed all of his flaws and they didn't
yeah,
hold anything back. Walk the Line held back on June Carter Cash,
yeah.
as a request from
One
Johnny
Love,
Cash.
One Love held back on Bob Marley a lot.
Held back. This one, I don't think it really held back. I think it didn't throw it in your face, but if you
The only
look at
thing
the
is they
subtlety
changed the
of
Sylvie
what
character.
happened, who?
They changed the Sylvie character because that's based off a person, but
Maybe.
I read it. I already read it,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
Bob
I
Dylan
just
didn't
don't
want
think it was as in your face as Ray, but there's if you look at the nuance of the film, you can tell that what Bob Dylan was doing during the film wasn't the best. Like he wasn't like a super nice guy when he was
no.
doing certain things, but it wasn't in your face. I thought it was crafted very smartly.
Yeah,
That's why I would almost give it the edge over Ray. But I mean, Ray is just so good.
I just think, like I said, it's almost just a personal preference, meaning I like Ray Charles music better than I like Bob Dylan's music. I'm not a huge Bob Dylan fan. Now, did I like some of the songs after hearing the first time? Yes, but Ray, I was like, oh man, I really like this music. Like, I
Yeah.
just like Ray Charles music better than Bob Dylan's. So that's the only reason why I'm personally giving it the edge. But I totally get your
Right.
point. This actually may be a better film, but just my own personal biases will choose Ray. So
There you go.
yeah. All right. Well, yeah, guys. Obviously, I think we both highly recommend this. Check this out. It's still in theaters, so make sure you go see that. Next, we have Nosferatu. And for those not too familiar, so Nosferatu, like I mentioned before, is a German film made in 1922, is a silent film, and it's considered the first horror film, the film that really invented the horror genre. Now, what's important to know is that this movie was based off of Bram Stoker's Dracula. However, they changed all the names and all that because this movie was specifically just supposed to be a small German film for German audiences. And so if you're familiar with Bram Stoker's Dracula, you're going to be like, "Oh, this is exactly the same." Well, it is in a sense, but again, if you know all the history of it, then you know that it's probably more again of a pure horror film versus Dracula. I would never consider a pure horror film unless you specifically made it that way. But Nosferatu is supposed to be more scarier and creepier and all that. So this is again directed by Robert Eggers. He also did The Northman, and The Witch. And again, this stars Lily-Rose Depp, Nicholas Hoult. Bill Skaarsgard is Count Orlok, which of course is Count Dracula, and Aaron Taylor Johnson as well, and Willem Dafoe. Definitely don't want to miss
No,
him. And this has a 7.7 on IMDb, and box office wise,
that's surprising.
Pete, a lot of people love this movie. So
I know they do.
budget, this is 50 million, and its gross worldwide's made 101. So again, I think this has probably just a broader appeal. Well, horror films, Pete.
What are people doing? A complete unknown is right out there for you guys. It's just right at your fingertips.
I know, but horror. I'll go first on this one, and then you
Yep.
can go. But like I mentioned, this is definitely more of a horror film. We know horror films are arguably the most successful genre in the business. They're made for cheaper, and then they typically have, because there's just a built-in audience that people will go see anything almost that you put on screen. Plus, it's so easy to come up with a scary idea. It's also a psychological thing. We don't need to go too far into that. But I'm going to judge this on a few different ways. First and foremost, the look of this film, whether it's the lighting, the cinematography. Uh,
10.
I thought this was a beautiful looking film. The atmosphere, everything I thought was exceptional. Um, the acting I thought was also very good. Um, I thought it worked. To me, this movie was kind of a cross between, kind of almost like The Exorcist meets Dracula. You know what I mean? Like that's the best way I can describe it. Now, my biggest flaw in this movie, and this is a personal thing for me, I mentioned before this was a German-made silent film, and there's already Bram Stoker's Dracula. Well, if this movie is supposed to take place in Germany and all that, then why did he choose to make the actors have English accents? German accents is one of the easiest ones to do, and I don't understand why they go with an English accent on one. For me, it took me out of the movie. Now, eventually, I got over it, but right from the beginning, I'm just like, it felt like London instead of Germany, and that was just kind of annoying in the beginning of it. Once, obviously, again, like I said, I got through it, but I would have just liked to have seen them make it more German, and that would be the easiest way to do that. Like, now they did have like the words sometimes. He would also talk in German sometimes, which makes the English thing even more weird. But yeah, but that's just a personal frustration thing. And again, going back to my overall thing, opinion, I'm not a huge horror guy, and so I didn't love this movie. Besides, again, just like the aesthetics, I do recommend everyone seeing it just because I think it's that well crafted of a film. But again, it's also you kind of already know the movie. It's nothing necessarily new in terms of that. This isn't necessarily a fresh idea. So again, I just thought they missed the mark with not going full German and all that. But overall, I thought it was okay if you like horror films. I think if you don't like horror films, this is not going to work for you. But Bill Skarsgård, I thought he was great in this too.
Yeah, and I think that that's at the end of the day, that's why I wasn't really a super fan of this movie. Outside of the overall look and the tone of it, I thought was a 10 out of 10. It was spot on. It was beautiful. I thought the performances at times were fine. I thought Willem Dafoe is the best part of the film
Yeah.
sometimes, but he only comes in later and because of his impact late in the movie, it's just I wanted him involved from the beginning. Like I almost got sour over it because he's just that good. I'm as old as people think that I am. I was not around in 1922. However, my frame of reference for this story itself is Bram Stoker's Dracula. And, that was sort of my first introduction into
Is that
that,
1991?
something like that.
Yeah.
A young Keanu Reeves.
Gary Oldman.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Oldman is just so great. And he was certainly a lot more subtle as a Dracula character, but that was intentional. They told that part of Dracula differently than the Nosferatu story.
Yeah.
However, at the end of the day, it's literally like I'm watching a carbon copy of the Bram Stoker's Dracula done in a Nosferatu style, by a director who does different movies than what is the norm. Um, all of them are really good, mind you. I just felt like if you were going to remake the first horror film of all time, I just didn't see anything different. I mean, there was
Yeah.
more effects, there was more like the gory parts were, they were gross, but nothing over the top. I mean, everything looked good. I don't know. I when I
I
was
kind of
done with
liked
the
your idea of incorporating William Dafoe's character more and
yeah,
maybe even taking it from his perspective and making Lily-Rose Depp and Nicholas Hoult kind of like side characters versus the main because yeah, it like
that would have been a better telling of the story because he was the one that had all of the information either way. So for
yeah,
the first half of the movie, nobody knows what the hell is going on except the audience who's watching, but everybody in the picture has no idea what's going on. And in fact, because of the way it was cut together, not that it's a bad editing job. I'm not saying that, but just the way that it was cut together, it was so jumpy. And a lot of the stuff early on, they didn't really give you a lot of time to breathe and to absorb what was going on. Everything was
yeah,
happening just really fast, and if you missed something, then you were kind of lost for a little while. And at the end of the day, this was a little bit jumpy and cutty at the beginning, where it could have, if you would have gone the Willem Dafoe as your main character, or from his point of view, anyways, you would have had a lot more time to breathe and to understand what was going on from the character's point of view versus we should just let the audience know what's going on
yeah.
from the beginning and try to follow along because of the way we're going to cut it together. Like, I don't know. I would
Yeah,
definitely see it
it just
again.
it would have been different in a good way. Like you're
Yeah.
saying, we've seen Dracula. So Nosferatu is literally a ripoff of Dracula. So you're just showing us the ripoff of Dracula. Um, yeah, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense of
Especially with
why.
a new audience. If you're introducing a
Yeah,
new audience to Nosferatu and the original story, then they can always go and reference it, but at least do it from like a different
yeah,
POV or something. I don't know.
yeah.
To
No,
have
no,
life
I agree
involved.
with that. Awesome. So again, I think ultimately, guys, I would say check it out because I think it's still an interesting movie. And again,
Beautifully shot.
yeah, I think it's an interesting movie. We're not necessarily thinking you're going to love it, but it's still an interesting movie, especially if you like horror films. I think it's worth seeing. So,
Especially after all the buildup too. There was so much buildup for this movie coming out, and I was just
yeah.
like, all right. I mean, that's
Well,
fine.
again, let's just say we're both wrong. It still has a 7.7 and a
Yep.
78 Metascore. So the critics,
And $100 million in the bank.
yeah. So, it made its money. Most, I would say check it out. The things are trending that way. So.
Sure.
All right, next we have fan favorite Sonic the Hedgehog 3. And yeah, so even like this whole franchise, I'd have been the first one to tell you, like, because even the video game, like I was never like in love with the video game. I always thought the video game was like, I'll play it because it came with the system, but I was
It
never
was
like,
Sega.
yeah, like, ooh, let me play Sonic the Hedgehog. Like it was never like my favorite game. Um, but now maybe it's because I was a little older too when it came out. But either way, when you're like, oh, hey, let's make a movie on it, I was probably the first one in line to say, oh, this can't be good. But the first one really surprised me,
First one
and
was great.
I enjoyed it. Uh, and I was like, wow, okay, that was way better than I thought. Very similar, like Super Mario Brothers, right? Like completely blew me away. Second one was like, okay, wow, like I did not expect to like the second one.
Wow, they put real thought into this.
Yeah, like they're doing a good job. And so I actually was looking forward to this one, was actually kind of excited to see it because honestly, they had a good track record. And I thought overall, this came through. This has a 7.2 on IMDb. And what's the Metacritic 56. Okay, that's fine. I mean, that's actually pretty good for a movie like this. I mean, this is the third movie in kind of a popcorn flick.
Right.
And then budget wise, guys. So I know the whole franchise just crossed $1 billion. This had a budget of 122, gross worldwide 338 million. So again, a very healthy franchise. But even the audience that was around me, I mean, they were definitely in it. Obviously, a lot of kids are really into this.
122.
Yeah. Did you say you saw this, Peter? No.
No, I did. I saw a little bit of this, and I
Okay.
kind of wanted to wait and watch it with my son, who's a huge Sonic fan. So I was hoping to see it with him, but I didn't see it in time for this broadcast.
No, no worries. But yeah, I'd say overall, I thought this was super entertaining. Jim Carrey's role in this, and I feel like him getting comfortable of almost being Jim Carrey again. This is really one of his first roles where it's like a throwback role for him, where is he really able to use his physical comedy and really just play with the character. And you can just see him getting better and better in each movie. And by this one, they added his grandpa as one of the characters, and that was like one of the storylines. And I thought, again, just a brilliant idea, fantastic. And then him doing the dual roles. There's a scene in the middle of this. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's so awesome. And it really, for me, kind of just made the movie like it was just brilliant comic geez brilliant comedy, and again just really played to Jim Carrey's strengths. And again, highly recommend it. If you have not seen Sonic at all, you can on Paramount. If you have Paramount Plus, you can see them all now, one and
Right.
two. There's even a series called Knuckles, which I actually do want to see. I hear it has nothing to do with this, but and
But
then
it's great that Jim Carrey has been almost semi-retired from movie making because he just abhors what goes on in Hollywood, and he's
yeah,
very honest about it. And so for him to commit to a role three times,
yeah.
um, there has to be something about it that is of value. And you get that instantly from the first one. And then the second one, you're like, okay, I'm kind of on board with this franchise. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this third one,
Yeah, for sure.
as is my son.
And well, okay, spoiler, but not too much. Um, we don't know whether or not they're gonna make a fourth one or not. Um, this movie, I read something on this. This movie could end now, and the series is complete and be great. But there is a end mid credit scene that had the kids wild. I don't even like know the names off the top of my head, but there was like kids behind me that were like jumping up and down, screaming. So if you're like in the Sonic universe, there's a huge surprise at the end again that
Ooh.
apparently
Tell me off the air.
I will. Well, I have to look it up because I don't remember the character, but I just know everyone around me was so stoked for it. So whether they do another one or not, it was still an incredible teaser. So again,
Nice.
you can just you just feel the energy in the theater, which I think is again, I give the Sonic, Jeff Fowler is the director. I give them huge credit. They done a really good job. So check that out. Next, we have Homestead. Now, Homestead is the latest Angel Studios movie. They've been making some interesting projects as of late, and this got a 5.7 IMDb, which is I would say this is more probably like a 6.5.
Hmm.
Um, I think the concept of this is fantastic. I think its execution is probably not as fantastic. Um, But this is basically, like I mentioned, this is basically like a series pilot in a movie, and then they'll have a series after this. 41 Megastore, I get this. This doesn't feel like a critic movie. Budget 5 million though, but it's made 17 so far. So again, this is kind of like a grassroots project that they're trying to make sure kind of gets off. So they're like,
They're
let's make
probably using it if they got a series already in the works. They're probably just using this as some sort of a marketing tool.
basically, yeah, basically, or and to get it to buy the series, yeah.
Sure.
But this stars Don Olivieri. Neal McDonough is probably the real star in this one. You know him from like Walking Tall. Um, he's done other stuff, but Walking Tall is what I always remember him from. Um, anybody else I'm trying to remember?
Isn't he, he's one of those actors that is just like he's in so many movies, but not the biggest roles. But every time you see him, you're like, he crushes every time.
Yeah, no one else is really major actor. Those are Those two are probably the middle. But the premise: amid chaos, ex Green Beret joins prepper compound. Love grows, truth arises, and a community unites. Let me paraphrase that since that and actually didn't sound that great. Basically, there's a what's it called? Nuclear NLE, nuclear level event that
Okay.
happens in Los Angeles. Basically, is almost like Independence Day. LA is basically getting kind of wiped out by a nuclear bomb. So people start kind of, getting away from LA. How you hear people have these like doomsday bunkers. Well, this guy has created this big compound in the mountains of Colorado, the Rockies. And so he invites friends over and it's self-sustaining. They grow their own food. But and then they hire security. So security guys are now on their way to now live off this compound. But through this story, they realize that a lot of people need help, but they were letting people go because they didn't have enough resources. And so it's kind of this journey of this compound, like figuring out what it is and how to move forward because they're also going through their resources fast. There's tons of people that need help outside. So there's just social debate on whether to help them, stuff like that. Like I said, I don't think this is a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination. Um,
Sounds like a good series.
yeah, I think it's gonna be a better series than it will be movie. I think again, I'm trying not to be too harsh on this because I like the project. Um, I just think overall some of the acting is not A-listers, and you feel it at times. Some of the characters are
Suffers a
just
bit.
it's a little the movie's a little clunky, I think is the best way to say it. But again, I like the concept, and I think overall it's worth the watch, and it's a solid premise. And I think it's worth the time and all that. So check it out. Um, there's also support things if you want to contribute to help make it a reality type thing. So check it out. Homestead, check it out now. I believe it's still in theaters. Next, and we'll keep this one short. But we have Kraven the Hunter. This is from Sony Pictures. So this movie is supposed to be another one of the universe of Spider-Man spin-offs. Pete, go ahead and give your review. I know it's not going to be very long, but
It's going to be very short, and it's pretty much I couldn't get through basically the first 10 minutes of it without saying to myself, you know what, I really don't have time for this. And I just shut it off. Now, to be fair, I didn't give it past 10 minutes, so I can't really say that this is not a good movie. And it may just have been because I was so busy, but I was completely disinterested from the get-go. Like I didn't care one bit about it.
well, I can expand upon it.
And the reviews are horrific.
Yeah, so this has a 5.4 on IMDb, which I think is actually fairly accurate. Budget this had, I believe, was 110 and has only made 58 worldwide. This is definitely a write-off for the Sony Corporation.
Oof.
This stars Aaron Taylor Johnson and Ariana DeBose. Um, I was kind of with you. Like, I did not want to see this movie. I basically went to go see this movie because of this podcast,
Thank you.
and I think like I've heard of Kraven the Hunter, not super familiar with him and his character in the comics and all that stuff, but I am definitely suffering a little bit of superhero fatigue, and so I
Big
was not excited to see this. I didn't think the premise was that good, and I definitely try to go in this movie with as much as open mind I can. But yeah, this movie just there's nothing about this movie that's just like, man, this needed to be put on the screen and we needed to see this. And then when I did some research afterwards, and what makes this movie even, I guess, worse is because Kraven the Hunter is supposed to actually be a villain, and they never in
Oh,
this movie really developed him at all to be a villain. And so it's like, okay, cool. Like even the let's not use the second one, but the first Joker, right? They never try and pretend that he is a good person or this, that, and the other. But again, even just reading about Kraven the Hunter, who he is in the comics, they never made that main trait that makes him want to hunt down Spider-Man. Like they never made that even that relevant in this film. And
Hmm.
it's just like I would have no idea how he becomes an enemy of Spider-Man because he talks about this whole movie how he hates criminals, but then he becomes one. Like it doesn't make any sense. And so
Right.
I don't know what they were trying to do with this. Um, but
And they're going to make
again,
five more.
yeah, it just didn't this I didn't think this was a good first one if you're trying to build that character because again, just like his name says, he thinks he's the greatest hunter in the world, and so that is really kind of what inspires him. But his this story really had nothing to do with that, and
Right.
he does do hunting in it, but um he never like it's never like his driving force. So it just makes me again kind of wonder where they were really trying to go with this. So I don't recommend this movie to be honest. I don't ever really like to say stuff, but um I just didn't really see a point to it or why. I don't by the way, I don't think this movie is like the worst movie I've ever seen. Um, it definitely suffered from bad press. And I didn't think this was like a complete waste of my time, but
No, but the bad press started early. Like
oh yeah.
it was bad.
But it's just again, it's just you're just sitting here wondering like why is this movie even happening in the first place? Like again,
And
it
how'd they
wasn't,
get Russell Crowe to do it?
it wasn't completely uninteresting. It was like I said, it wasn't terrible. That's why I think a 5.4 is like accurate. Like you might watch it on streaming, and some people may like it. So I'm not dismissing that.
Yeah. Hell
But
do we know?
again, this movie, especially for 110 million, it shouldn't have been made. If you can do it for 30 million, go for it. But this should have been smaller and really develop the characters, I think, to be successful. But 110, this this did not work.
That's
So.
crazy.
All right, let's get back to a positive note. Next movie is Carry On, and this is on Netflix, streaming now, starring Taron Egerton and Jason Bateman. Um, Pete, go ahead and give me a review on this one, and I'll follow.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the trailer for it where it's just Jason Bateman and Edgerton sitting there and you know, what an interesting career Jason Bateman has had because this is a guy that was on top of the world as a teen on hit shows and then like
And in Teen Wolf 2,
literally disappeared and then came back and was put in a couple of minor roles that he just crushed to the point where people were like, he needs
like
to
The
be in
Breakup.
every single
Yep.
comedy. He needs to be in it. And then he didn't just stop there. And then he just starts doing all these dramatic roles, like in Ozark, for example, where
Which
he's
he directs.
phenomenal. Um, and then I just love seeing Jason Bateman doing something other than comedy. And in this one, he's so dark and he's so intimidating and manipulative. Like you really like if you were in Edgerton's position, you would have done everything this guy told you to do just because of how he looks at you
Yeah.
and how he says it. He's brilliant, and I love Jason Bateman. And I thought this movie was really well done. Um, it was a fun ride, and I think from the beginning it just starts. That ticking time clock just doesn't go away in this film until the end, where it's supposed to be done.
Right.
It's all the way through this movie. It's a fun watch, and I recommend it highly.
Yeah, I've actually seen this twice, uh, and I agree with you. I think that, this is definitely a concept film, genre film, but this is one that is really well done and it's tight. Doesn't
Yeah.
have doesn't have real plot holes. Everything is super plausible. Um,
I disagree. The only thing that's just unbelievable about this movie, and it's a very nitpicky, is the fact that all of the TSA agents who work at the airport are having great times, great interactions with the people, dancing, having fun, talking to the people, and doing all this stuff. That's bullshit. That would never happen in real life. Those
That's not
people don't
true.
want to be there,
That's
and
not true, Pete.
they don't want to help you at all.
I just dealt with a TSA agent because they had taken out my laptop and I forgot that they did that, and I left my laptop. This guy was super nice, super generous.
Yeah,
Uh,
but was he on a
Shout out to
microphone
you, Daniel.
dancing?
Shout out to you, Daniel, in South Dakota. But yeah, he got me my laptop back. That's why we're able to do this now.
Yeah.
Um,
But you guys weren't like playing games while you were waiting and like, trivia and so
oh yeah.
silly.
All right, that's fine.
Anyway, it was nitpicky.
It's super nitpicky. I mean, overall, in terms of like you're saying, like Jason Bateman manipulating Taron Egerton, I thought that was very plausible. Everything, nothing was outrageous. This wasn't like Fast and the Furious TSA agents, and this was again, I thought very practical, made sense, fun ride, and definitely worth. This is definitely a movie you could see over and over again. You could throw on the back of the TV and or in the background and totally watch. And so,
Right there on
if you have
Netflix, right
not
there
seen
for
it,
you.
yeah, if you haven't seen this one, definitely check it out. It's streaming on Netflix now. Okay, and then lastly, um, Mother's Instinct. So I didn't even know this was. I didn't even hear anything about this movie. Every once in a while, I'll check the different services and just see if there's a new movie that pops up for this podcast. And I literally saw this last night, and I saw Anne Hathaway is in it, Jessica Chastain, and I was like, oh wow, okay. They don't do these guys don't just do any movie. Let me check this movie out. And
Let's
so
give it a shot.
yeah, so this movie again streaming on Hulu. This movie's kind of a it reminded me of not Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, but oh, Rock the Cradle, with Rebecca De Mornay. Not as sinister per se, but basically a tragic incident happens, and it what seems like two perfect neighbors, then things go awry. It's kind of a psychological thriller where you're not sure what's reality, what's not. And so it's an interesting movie. Kind of again, kind of a simple kind of not simple, but a genre type film. But I thought it was interesting. I thought it was well done, and it definitely held my attention the whole time. Like I thought it moved pretty decently,
Oh,
and
good.
I thought it was worth the watch. So if you have Hulu, check it out now. Really good performances by Anne Hathaway and Jessica Chastain, and
Yeah, she's
interesting.
always good.
Yeah, they're both exceptional actresses, hence the awards that they always get. And I thought this movie worked. I thought it was a solid hit. I don't know what. Let me see what the IMDb is on it, but I'd give it like a 6.5. That sounds about. It's only an hour and a half, 6.3. So yeah, so that's exactly what I'd give it.
Yeah, you're
And it's
right there.
based off a book of France. So, all right, guys. Well, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode. Like I mentioned, we want to get in our best of 2024 episode. So stay tuned for that. And then the next major release is going to be Den of Thieves 2. I love Den of Thieves, so super looking forward to it. That's going to be out this Friday, January 10th.
I want to watch that tonight.
Yeah.
The first
So, yeah. So, thanks, guys. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Please give your comments below if you have any. You want to talk about these movies as well. We'll respond back to you. Love talking points. We've had some good commentary, so please continue to do so. Like, share, subscribe, and with that, Pete, that is a cut. Thanks, guys.